السلام عليكم. اتكلمنا عن الشورت ستوري والelements of the short story وعملنا analysis ل The Story of an Hour by Keats Chopin. هنتنقل ل another literary form وهو الpoetry أو الشعر. Rita Dove defines poetry or says about poetry, poetry is language at its most distilled and most powerful. طبعا اللغة في الشعر مهمة جدا جدا جدا، والشاعر بينقي كلماته بعناية شديدة، عشان كده بنقول poetry is language at its most distilled and most powerful. Every word when we come to write a poem is very well chosen and is very well indicative. الشاعر بيختار طبعا كل كلامه بمنتهى الدقة والعناية، وكل كلمة بيبقى ليها دلالة في القصيدة. Poetry, it is a composition in verse, communicating the sense of complete experience. It is a literary form characterized by a strong sense of rhythm and meter, and an emphasis on the interaction between sound and sense. يعني إيه الكلام ده؟ يعني البوتري بيبقى composition، كتابة بتنقل أحاسيس، وبيبقى عندي دايما الأحاسيس والساوند والسنس، كل ده بيبقى فيه interaction وبيبقى فيه تفاعل في أي قصيدة لما أكون بقراها. It is a literary form characterized by a strong sense of rhythm and meter. وهنشوف إيه المقصود برhythm وإيه المقصود بميتر في البوتري. The elements of the poem، زي أي حاجة اتكلمنا عنها، زي أي نوع أدبي في له عناصر. زي ما الشورت ستوري ليها elements، البوم برضو ليها elements. طيب the definition of the elements of poetry is a set of instruments used to create a poem. ايه هي الحاجات، كل الانسترومنتس، كل الادوات اللي في الاخر تقولي انا عندي اهو قصيدة. خلاص، من الاليمنتس بتاعت البوم الثيم طبعا، المين ايديا. What's meant by a theme? This is what the poem is all about. It is the central idea that the poet wants to convey. كل قصيدة زي أي رواية، زي أي قصة قصيرة، ليها ثيم، ليها ايديا، ليها فكرة الشاعر بيحاول ينقلها من خلال القصيدة بتاعته. The technique and the style. The style of a poem can be analyzed according to 3 levels. لما باجي أتكلم عن التكنيك في القصيدة أو عن الستايل بتاع القصيدة، بقدر أتكلم عنه من خلال 3 مستويات. المستوى الأول اللي هو الفونولوجيكال ليفل. وإيه المقصود بالفونولوجيكال ليفل؟ This refers to the sound effect of a poem. القصيدة طبعا بيبقى فيه قصائد غنائية وبيبقى فيها نوع من الموسيقى، فده الكلمات بتستخدم عشان to create this effect, to give me the sound effect. Various devices could be used to give musicality to the poem. عندي أدوات كتيرة بيستخدمها الشاعر علشان يضفي هذا النوع من الموسيقى على القصيدة بتاعته. أول حاجة هي الرايم. مقصود بالرايم القافية أو the repetition of sounds within different words, either end sound, middle or beginning. يعني إيه؟ يعني يبقى في عندي ساوند معين، صوت معين بيتكرر جوه القصيدة من خلال الكلمات. الريبيتيشن اوف ساوندز ده ممكن يبقى في النهاية، في آخر الكلمة، يعني يبقى عندي كذا كلمة بينتهوا بنفس الساوند، فده بيعمل لي internal rhyme، بيعمل لي musicality في البوم اللي عندي. ممكن الساوند ده يتكرر at the beginning. خلاص، يبقى the sound could be repeated either at the beginning, the end or in the middle. الباترن اللي بيتكرر بيه الساوند ده اسمه الرايم سكيم بتاع البوم. خلاص، عندي مثلا for example for rhyming words عندي loose and goose. okay, loose goose, it ends in the same sound. نهاية الكلمتين ليها نفس الساوند. عندي بعد كده الرhythm والميتر. ايه المقصود بالرhythm والميتر في البوم؟ They are the building blocks of poetry. Rhythm is the pattern of sound created by the varying length and emphasis given to different syllables. Meter is the rhythmic pattern created in a line of verse, the pattern of the beats. الرhythm هو الإيقاع. اوكي، إيقاع يعني ايه؟ يعني الاختلاف في اللينث بتاع المقاطع المختلفة في الجملة. اوكي، في مقطع قصير، مقطع طويل، في مقطع بعمل له ستريس، في مقطع ما بعملهوش ستريس. كل ده بيديني الإيقاع في القصيدة. طيب، بعد كده عندي من الحاجات اللي بتديني برضو ميوزيكاليتي للقصيدة الاليتريشن. ايه المقصود بالاليتريشن؟ two or more words which have the same initial sound. The alliteration may be separated by prepositions. يعني لما بيبقى عندي كذا كلمة بس الساوند الأولاني فقط هو اللي بيتكرر، ده اسمه alliteration. For example, pretty princess. ألاحظ إن أنا عندي أول حرفين في الكلمتين ب، pretty، pretty princess. فأنا عندي alliteration في الجزء الأولاني في الانيشال ساوند. busy bee، ب ب، busy bee، دي alliteration. من الحاجات برضو اللي بتعمل لي musicality في القصيدة الكونسونانس. وإيه هو المقصود بالكونسونانس؟ هو repetition of a sequence of consonants but with a change in the vowel. يبقى عندي مجموعة consonants متكررة، كلمتين نفس الكونسونانتس موجود في ده موجود في ده، ولكن اللي بيختلف الفاول فقط. زي كلمة live love، ده برضو بيديني ميوزيكاليتي. عندي كلمتين الكونسونانتس واحد ولكن اللي مختلف الحرف الفاول اللي هو الاي والاو فقط. من الحاجات برضو اللي بتديني انوماتوبيا، بتديني ميوزيكاليتي في القصيدة الانوماتوبيا. طيب، ايه الانوماتوبيا؟ Onomatopoeia is a word whose sound seems to resemble a word whose sound resemble the sound it creates. For example, hiss, hiss. This is the sound of a snake, okay? And in reality, it's like this. Buzz. This is the buzz of bees. So the word resembles the sound that we want to show. This also gives musicality in the poem. الليفل الثاني اللي بعمل analysis على أساسه في أي قصيدة هو السيمانتك ليفل أو المينينج. المقصود بالسيمانتك ليفل it includes the denotation and connotation of words and the figurative usage of language. Okay? Some of the figure speech that we could meet in any poem is طبعا أول حاجة السيميلي. الفيجرز اوف سبيتش اللي هي زي ما بنقولها بالعربي مثلا مواطن الجمال. اوكي، الفيجرز اوف سبيتش ايه هي اللغة اللي بيستخدمها الشاعر علشان to convey his meaning، عشان ينقل لي المعنى ده. المحسنات البديعية الفيجرز اوف سبيتش المحسنات البديعيه اللي في القصيده. اوكي، فعندي من الفيجرز اوف سبيتش اللي ممكن الاقيها في اي بوم السيميلي. ايه المقصود بالسيميلي؟ It's a comparison using the words like or as. simile تشبيه. اوكي، my love is like a red rose. هنا عندي simile بيشبه اللوف بتاعه ب the red rose. خلاص، يبقى one of the most famous figures of speech is the simile. طيب ايه هي بقى الميتافور؟ الميتافور زي الاستعارة باللغة العربية مثلا. A metaphor is a method of comparison where the words like and as are not used. أنا عندي في السيميلي comparison بس مستخدم like و as لأن ده تشبيه صريح واضح. My love is like a red rose. الميتافور هو تشبيه برضو بدون ما استخدم like or as. The use of metaphor compares two things that are not alike and finds something about them to make them alike. بقارن بين حاجتين قد يبدو ان هم مختلفين عن بعض او ما فيهمش وجه شبه، ولكن انا I brought them together، بجيبهم مع بعض comparing them in order to show what is similar in both of them, what makes them similar to each other. For example عندنا life is a journey. Yes, life is long like a journey. We learn things throughout our life exactly as we learn things throughout a journey. فهنا life is a journey is a metaphor. There is a comparison between life and journey, okay? Without the use of like or as in a simile. من الفيجرز اوف سبيتش كمان المحسنات البديعية اللي بيستخدمها الشاعر السيمبلز، رمز. Generally it is an object representing another to give it an entirely different meaning that is much deeper and more significant. بستخدم حاجة بتديني معنى أعمق من المعنى بتاعها اللي أنا شايفه أو اللترال، المعنى اللترال اللي قدامي. فده المقصود بالسيمبل، بالرمز. For example, the dove is a symbol of peace. اليمامة رمز للسلام. Pun, two words with the same pronunciation but different meanings. زي for example sun وsun، في pun فيهم. write وwrite، write يمين ورايت يكتب. hear يسمع وhear هنا. كل ده بيستخدم for a purpose، for a reason. بيستخدموا البوت for a reason. عندي بعد كده من الفيجرز اوف سبيتش طبعا البيرسونيفيكيشن. ايه هو البيرسونيفيكيشن؟ This is a way of giving an inanimate object the qualities of a living thing. Okay? The sun smiled down on her. عندي هنا personification. شبهت الشمس بإنسان بيبتسم. اديت للشمس صفة من صفات البشر. Okay? This is giving an inanimate object the qualities of a living thing. بعد كده عندي السينتاكس، عندي الجرامر اللي مستخدمه البوت في القصيدة بتاعته. عندي التنسز of verbs for example. أحيانا البروجريسيف فورم دايما indicates an ongoing action. The present tense indicates fact. The imperative indicates urgency. المودal verb بيدوني different implications. May can for example indicate probability وهكذا. يبقى إذن الجرامر اللي بيستخدمه البوت برضو مهم. التنس بتاع الفيرب، كل حاجة بيستخدمها الشاعر بتبقى مستخدمة لسبب وليها دور في القصيدة ومعنى. البواتيك فورمز، الأشكال الشعرية. عندي كذا فورم للقصيدة. القصيدة ممكن تتكتب في كذا شكل. Certain traditional forms of poetry have a distinctive stanza group, have a distinctive stanza length combined with a distinctive meter or rhyme pattern. One of these forms is the sonnet. يبقى السونت هي شكل من أشكال القصيدة. السونت هي عبارة عن a single stanza lyric poem containing 14 lines. السونت أو السونيتا باللغة العربية هي عبارة عن قصيدة مكونة فقط من 14 سطر، 14 lines only, written in iambic pentameter. اوكي، اللينث بتاع اللاينز بتاعها او هي مكتوبه ازاي او الايقاع الموسيقي معمول ازاي عن طريق الايامبيك بنتامتر. There are three predominant sonnet forms. عندي 3 اشكال للسونت. The first one is the Italian sonnet. الإيطاليان sonnet دي developed by the Italian poet Petrarch and it is divided into مقسمة إلى octave and sestet. الأوكتيف هم الفيرست 8 lines، أول 8 سطور، والرايم سكيم الرايم سكيم بتاعهم يعني القافية بتاعتهم، الباترن بتاع القافية بتاعهم بتنتهي ازاي؟ بتنتهي بالطريقة دي A B B A A B B A or A B B A C D D C and a sestet. الست سطور اللي بعد كده الرايم سكيم القافية بتاعتهم بتخلص ازاي؟ سي دي اي سي دي اي او سي دي سي سي دي سي. دي اول نوع من السونتس وهي الايطاليان سونت. نيجي بعد كده للشكسبيريان سونت او الانجليش سونت. الشكسبيريان سونت contains 3 quatrains and a final couplet. بتتكون من 3 quatrains، 4 سطور، 4 4 4. اوكي، 3 quatrains and a final couplet، واخر سطرين rhyming like each other بسميهم the final rhyming couplet او the final couplet. الرايم سكيم بتاع الشكسبيريان او الانجليش سونت بيبقى دايما A B A B C D C D E F E F G G، ده الفاينل كوبلت. والنوع الثالث من السونتس اللي هو السبنسيريان سونت. It is a variant that Edmund Spenser developed from the Shakespearean sonnet. The rhyme scheme is A B A B B C B C C D C D E E. دول ال 3 types of sonnets that we have. احنا بقى هندرس sonnets for 3 major romantic poets. هندرس سونت لكل واحد فيهم. قبل ما ناخد أول واحد وندرس السونت بتاعته، هنتكلم very briefly عن الرومانتيك poets وعن الرومانتسيزم. اوكي، الرومانتسيزم is an anti-artistic and intellectual movement in Europe in the late 18th century. هي موفمنت ظهرت في أوروبا في القرن ال18، في أواخر القرن ال18، and it is characterized by a heightened interest in nature, emphasis on the individual's expression of emotion and imagination, departure from the attitudes and forms of classicism, and rebellion from social rules and conventions. الحركة الرومانسية دي ظهرت في late 18th century، وكان فيها ستريس، كان فيها تركيز جامد جدا على النيتشر، على الطبيعة، على المشاعر، على الخيال، ودي كانت حاجة مهمة جدا. الايماجينيشن كان مهم قوي، وبعدت تماما عن كل الاتيتيودز بتاعة الحركة الكلاسيكية اللي كانت قبلها. الرومانتيك ايج دوت كان فيه ميجر بويتس اللي هم الرومانتيك بوتس. The major romantic poets at this time were جون كيتس اللي هندرس البوم بتاعته بعد شوية، ويليام وورdsworth طبعا، كولريدج ولورد بايرون كانوا من ال great poets of this movement، وويليام بليك وبيرسي شيلي. The best known romantic poets are William Blake, William Wordsworth, Coleridge, Byron, Shelley, and John Keats. Much of the major writing of the period takes place between 1789. التاريخ ده بيفكرنا بإيه؟ بيفكرنا بالثورة الفرنسية when the French Revolution began, and 1824 the death of Byron لما مات لورد بايرون. The movement is seen as a response to changing political and social conditions in one respect or another. Romanticism has very little to do with things popularly thought of as romantic. Although love may occasionally be the subject of romantic art, rather, it is a movement that redefined the ways in which people in Western cultures thought about themselves and about their world. Romantic poets strove to capture man's relationship with nature. يبقى الرومانتيك بوتس المعروفين جدا في الفترة دي كانوا ويليام بليك، ويليام وورdsworth، كولريدج، بايرون، شيلي، كيتس. دول كانوا من الأشهر البوتس بتوع الموفمنت دي. وعلى عكس ما يبدو رومانتسيزم and romantic poetry ما كانش كله about love، ده كان في emphasis كبيرة على النيتشر كمان. It was an expression of emotion and thoughts, and it emphasized imagination and nature. هندرس أو هناخد مع بعض poem لجون كيتس، و البوم اللي هندرسها لجون كيتس اسمها When I Have Fears. When I Have Fears. Okay. جون كيتس بيقول ايه؟ واحدة من الكوتس بتاعته: Nothing ever becomes real till it is experienced. مش بنحس بالحاجة unless we experience it, unless we go through it. Okay. John Keats is born in London. The English romantic poet, John Keats, was orphaned by the age of 14 and died when he was only 25. His poems became the cornerstone of the romantic movement. Like all romantics, he was a big fan of emotions. His poem, When I Have Fears, reflects his desperate desire for love and success. It also shows his certainty that he will die before they come his way. يبقى John Keats died at a very young age when he was only 25, and actually he wrote this poem which is entitled When I Have Fears, and in this poem he reflects his desire for love and success, and he also reflects his fears of death. He's afraid that he might die before achieving success and before experiencing love. The poet is reflecting in this novel, in this poem, is reflecting upon all the things that he wants in life, namely success, fame, and love. يبقى البوم دي the poet is showing us what he wants in life. He wants success, he wants fame, and he wants love. Yet Keats is sure that his life will come to an end before he can achieve his goals. The poem shows his desires and his despair. He has a desire. He wants success. He wants fame. He wants love. But at the same time, he is sure that he will die young. So the poem shows his desires and his despair. In this sonnet, John Keats expresses his fear that he might die before having a chance to experience the love of a woman or develop his talent as a poet. Okay? He expresses his fear that he will be deprived of the three things that he values most. What are these things? Writing poetry, experience wonderful mystery of nature and gain experience from nature, and then experience the magical power of passionate love. يبقى these are the things that he feels he will be deprived of. He feels that he will not have a chance to write the poetry that he wants to write. He will not have a chance to use nature and gain experience from nature and use the different elements of nature in his poems. And he feels that he will not have enough time to experience the magical power of love. Each of the three quatrains in this Shakespearean sonnet deals with one of his fears. يبقى he wrote his sonnet in the Shakespearean manner, okay? And the sonnet consists of three quatrains, okay, and a final couplet. The first three quatrains discuss or reveal each one of his fears. It is a standard sonnet written in iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter يعني we have an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed one. The first fear, the first quatrain, expresses his fear of what? As you see here, he wants to read and write and express his ideas in his poems. So his first fear is that early death will prevent him from realizing his dreams, will prevent him from writing the poems that he wants to write. He feels that his brain is teeming with subjects. His brain is full of subjects, is full of ideas. But all these ideas and subjects and the inspirations that he has are enough to fill the bookshelf above his desk. He needs time for the ripening and harvesting of his gifts. He needs time to develop himself. He needs time to develop his talent and to be able to include all the ideas that he wants to convey in his poems. But he feels that he will not have enough time to do this. The other thing that he feels he will not have time to do is what? Nature. He feels that he will not have enough time to look upon nature and use it in his poetry. In the following quatrain, the poet looks at nature, looks at the clouds, at the stars as the source of inspiration. But he feels that death at a young age will prevent him from enjoying this, will kill his imagination, will kill the essential resource of his writing before it has had a chance to mature. He feels that he will not have enough time to mature, he will not have enough time to develop and improve his talent, and he will not have enough time to use nature in his poems. The third one is love. He feels that, or in the third quatrain, he feels that he will not have enough time to feel love or to experience this emotion. In the final couplet, there is a change of thought. So we have 3 quatrains. Each quatrain expresses one of his fears, and then finally, in the final couplet, there is a total change of thought. Thus, the poem expresses 2 major thoughts. The first part of the sonnet expresses Keats' fear of dying young, with the result that he will not fulfill himself as a writer. Then, losing his beloved is his other fear. Then, in the final couplet, he resolves his fears by asserting the unimportance of love and fame. So, we have 2 major thoughts: fear of not being able to write the poems he wants to, fear that he won't be able to experience love, he won't be able to use nature in his poems, and then finally in the final couplet we have a total change in his thoughts, and he resolves his fears by asserting the unimportance of love and fame. Now, we will move on to the poem, we will read it, and we will explain it, paraphrase it, and analyze it. When I have fears, when I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, before high-piled books in charactery hold like rich garners the full ripened grain. Cease هنا معناها stop. Gleaned means to collect patiently. Teeming means full of. Charactery means words. Garner, Silas, or the storehouse for grains. When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, before high-piled books in charactery hold like rich garners the full ripened grain. This is the first quatrain. What do we have here? We have the poet here feels that he will die before he has used his great ideas in writing poetry, before he could write several books that are rich with his mature ideas. So, in the first quatrain, he expresses his fears. He feels that he will die. When I have fears that I may cease to be, that I may stop to be, that means when I have fears that I will die. Okay. Then, if this happens, this means that I will not have enough time to put my great ideas on paper, to write great ideas and have books and books with my mature ideas. In the first quatrain, we have the harvest metaphor. We have a long metaphor where he compares between writing poetry and harvesting grain. The first quatrain emphasizes how fertile his imagination is and how much he has to express. Therefore, he uses imagery of the harvests. The poet identifies one of his fears for the reader. It's not merely death that worries him, but the fear that he may not achieve his full creative potential. His full creative potential, he refers to it as his full ripened grain in the form of high piled books that he could write. Death will cut short his poetic career. Simply stated, his creative potential is like the grains that needs time to ripen. Full ripened grain, ideas which need to be written down, are like the grain to be harvested. This is the metaphor that he's using. His ideas are like the grain that needs harvesting. The fruits of the poet's mind become ripened. امتى الايدياز بتاعته ده become ripe and full only as he ages. When he gets old, all his ideas will be mature, exactly like the grain that needs time to become ripe and to become full. His ideas are exactly like that. They need time in order to be mature. Only when he ages, his writings will be mature in content. Therefore, thus, there will be no chance for harvesting them. These fruits, which are his poetic works, will give him fame and are represented by the high piled books. The books are compared to garners. Books are compared to the storehouse for grain. Okay, المكان اللي بيتشال فيه الغلال. البوكس اللي هو هيكتبها هتبقى like the garners. فيها ايه البوكس دي هتبقى فيها all his mature ideas. Okay, now the figures of speech in this quatrain. Teeming. The word teeming suggests that the speaker is still full of life and ideas. That's why we have this progressive form, which contrasts with his approaching death. High piled and rich signify abundance, الكثرة, الوفرة. He still has so many ideas. Okay, gleaned, grain, garners. What do we have here? We have a repetition of the initial sound, and when we have a repetition of the initial sound, this is alliteration. Alliteration creates rhythm and focuses the reader's attention on the harvest image. All the words are related to this image, the harvest image. We have words like when and before. The repetition of these adverbs suggest what? They suggest the passing of time and shows that the poet is aware of his threatening death. We always have reference to this. When, before I could do this, before I could do that. So this repetition shows that he is aware of threatening death and he's aware of the passage of time. The following quatrain, when I behold, احنا اتفقنا ان اول quatrain discusses his fear of not being able to include all his ideas or to write his ideas in books and to write the poems that he wants to. The second quatrain conveys his fear of not being able to use nature in his poetry. فالquatrain اللي بعد كده بيقول ايه؟ When I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance. When I behold معناها when I take notice of, or when I look at the night's starred face, طبعا it means the sky. When I look at the sky, okay, huge cloudy symbols of a high romance. The sky and the night and nature include all the symbols that could be used to write a romantic poem, or that were actually used in writing romances, okay? And think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hands of chance. High romance here means the elevated narrative of chivalry, the romances that used elevated language. From where does this elevated language come from? It comes from nature, from the different elements of nature. The paraphrase: when I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance. The poet is gazing up at the sky, he's looking at the sky. He finds in the clouds all of the symbols of a high romance, all the symbols that could be used in a romance, and all the symbols that could be used again in poetry. He fears that he will die before he can be able to use in his poetry the material offered by nature. He will not get the chance to represent the beauty of nature in his medium, namely poetry. يعني he won't be able to use the power of imagination and emotion. He won't be able to use his imagination, his emotion, to write his poetry and to include in this poetry all the beauty of nature and all the different elements that he could use as symbols in his poems. Night's starred face, this is personification. Night is personified as having a face. The third quatrain: and when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love, then on the shore. And when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee, thee means you, more, never have relish in the fairy power, I will not enjoy. The fairy is an old form of fairy, the fairy power, the magical power of love. إيه بقى? What do we have here? In this third quatrain, the poet talks about idealistic love. He talks about passionate love. In addition to his fear of failing to achieve his poetic aspirations, the poet is also concerned with having ever experienced love. He's afraid he may never experience the magical power of love. He's afraid he may never get another chance to see this potential beloved, who is also at the mercy of time, as she is a creature of an hour. The quatrain reflects his hopelessness. يبقى in this quatrain, he knows, he feels that the woman he loves is also a creature of an hour, which means she's also mortal. She will also die. Her lifespan is short. So, like him, she will not live long, and he will not be able to love her and enjoy her company. Okay? The figures of speech that we have in this part, fair creature of an hour, implies that she is mortal and that humans don't have much time to spend on earth. Fairy, this use of the old-fashioned word suggests that life is timeless and suggests the magical and inexplicable quality and power of love. And then we come to the final couplet. When of the wide world I stand alone and think, till love and fame to nothingness do sink. Suddenly we have here a change in thought. Finally, after reflecting upon his feelings, which the act of writing this sonnet has involved, Keats thinks about human insignificance compared to the whole world. He finally accepts the unimportance of his desire for fame and love, and thus ceases to fear and yearn. He realizes that death turns everything into nothing. Therefore, his high hopes for fame and love are not worth such intense stress. يبقى finally, in the final couplet, we have a total change of thought. After expressing his fear throughout the first three quatrains, finally, in the end, he realizes that he doesn't have to worry much about love and fame, because death turns everything into nothing. Okay? Wide word, we have alliteration here, and this alliteration creates rhythm and suggests the vastness of the world. We will stop here and we'll continue this final part where there is a turn, a change in the mood of the sonnet in the final couplet. We'll discuss this next time, inshallah. Thank you and good luck.